Hi there, my name is Zan, and I'm a secondary literacy coach with the OCDSB. This is the first of 3 videos on reading at the intermediate and secondary level. This first video is focused on how students learn to read and why it's important for us as intermediate and secondary teachers to understand the process. So learning to read is a process that actually begins even before we hold a pen or a pencil in our hand. And a lot of it has to do with our ability to hear and to listen to sounds and to imitate those sounds. And so that's what we call phonemic awareness, a very fancy word. Essentially what it means is just being able to hear sounds, to imitate the sounds, and also to separate the sounds and blend them together. So phonemic awareness is the first part of learning to read, and this begins actually when we're infants, when we're babies, and we look up at our caregivers' mouths and we watch their mouths as they're making sounds, and we are motivated, we are inspired to do the same with our own. So this first video I want to share with you is a video of my daughter, and she's probably, I don't know, maybe 5 months here. And in this video, you'll see I've said to her, I love you, I love you, I love you. And she's been just so focused, concentrating on my mouth. And then all of a sudden, even though she doesn't know what she's saying, she repeats, you. So this is the first stage of learning to read, and it really begins with our ability to hear sounds, to imitate the articulatory gesture, and that's what you're going to look at now. Love you. We've been able to hear and we've been able to imitate the articulatory gesture, and we're really starting to develop our ability to do that, our phonemic awareness. We move to another level of phonemic awareness, and this other level involves segmenting or separating sounds and blending them together. If we teach students how to read by memorizing a word, as an example, if we say memorize the word tin, then when they go to see the word tip, they're not going to be able to read it. But if we support them to be able to hear the sounds t, I, n, to separate them and then blend them tin together, we're going to support them to be able to read other words as well. So not only tin, but t, I, p, tip. So the second video you're going to watch is of my daughter again. At this point, she's 5 years old, and she's practicing her phonemic awareness of segmenting the sounds and blending them back together. We're going to use the blocks to show the sounds in a word. Let's say I wanted to show you the word sit. The word sit has 3 sounds. S, I, t. Can you point to the block that stands for S? Which block stands for T? Nice work. And they're not blocks, I guess they're stones, eh?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to do
rocks.
this. They're rocks. Second part of this first stage, phonemic awareness, which is listening, imitating, separating, blending, is called letter recognition. And this is where students and children begin to make the connection between the sound and the grapheme or the letter itself. So this is a bit of an abstract one where they have to make the connection between what is the sound and what does that letter look like. And so this third video is of my daughter practicing some letter naming fluency, where she's looking at the letter itself and she's telling us what sound it makes and what letter it is. Okay, press the down button.
A, N, U. I, Teeth. Teeth. S. M. A.
Good job. Now that Penny has been able to listen, hear, imitate the sounds, to separate them and to blend them, and then also to make the connection between the sounds and the letters, now we're moving into the next stage, which is phonics. So phonics is her ability to be able to read and write based on her knowledge of the sound to letter correspondence. So this first video you're going to see is of Penny tapping the sounds of a word using what we call an Elkonin box, which helps students to make the sound to letter correspondence, and also helps them with spelling and also reading. Can you write it now below? Tell me the sounds as you write it. Not to.
Penny, you don't have to take so long coloring that in.
Okay.
Like a heart.
Good. I'm going to flip the page over. And I want you to write it again without the boxes. In that video of Penny, first we asked her to tap the sounds in the word. And then she had to blend those sounds together. So we're supporting her to make the sound to letter correspondence, and we're also supporting her to do that segmenting and blending process, which is going to help her with reading and writing. The second stage of that process, she had the boxes to tap the sounds, but she didn't have the letters. So she had to come up with the letters, but she was using her phonemic awareness and her that repetition of segmenting and blending to be able to know how to spell the word. And the third part of that process, she would flip the page over and she would not have any boxes. And so she would have to do the sound to letter correspondence and tapping it without the box. So we're scaffolding the process of writing in this case and of orthographically mapping her understanding of that word, the sounds within it, and how to write those. The next stage in learning to read is word recognition. And this is when students receive a text, let's say, and they're able to recognize the words within that text by sounding them out. In this video you're going to watch, Penny has received a decodable text, which means that she can crack the code of that text because she's been taught every single sound within that text. This is very empowering for students to have access in that way. And so in this video, you'll watch as she'll practice the same things we practiced with the Elkonin box and the hearing and the segmenting and blending. And now she's applying that to her reading and to recognizing words. That's a heart word. What do we have?
The map.
Good. Can you read that whole one again?
I tap the map.
Good. And what's the next one?
The
You can't guess. I want you to read the word. Remember, that's a heart word. A tin. Yeah, good. So what you'll notice here is she was guessing. She was trying to guess, what is that word? I think it's probably just the. And this is often what we see too in students at the intermediate and secondary level. Sometimes they know the first part of the word. So maybe they see the word backpack and they read back. But then they don't recognize or they can't decode the second part of the word. And so they might just guess the word. And if they say background instead of backpack, the entire meaning of the text is going to be changed. So it's really important to get an understanding of how our students are reading and if they're fully able to decode or read the words on the page of the text that we're providing in science or in math or in social studies, because their entire comprehension could be compromised if they are not understanding or if they're not reading the full word. So we move from word recognition to reading fluency. And reading fluency, again, is being able to recognize the words on the page fairly automatically and to be able to read with a nice pace. And the pace impacts our ability to understand as well. Because if you read a text like the man walked home, and if we read it spaced out like that, our processing memory, we only have about 30 seconds that our processing memory, our working memory can comprehend. And so if we are reading very slowly, our understanding, we can't make the connection between the first word and the last word in that sentence, or we can't understand it. So the meaning making between words is compromised if we don't have a nice rate. The other thing that happens if students are struggling with decoding, which is being able to read the words on the page at a nice pace or read fluently, is that they don't have enough cognitive space to be able to understand what the text is about because they're spending so much of their energy sounding out the words. And so a student's ability to read fluently with a nice pace, with accuracy of the words, and with expression or prosody has a huge impact on their ability to access a text. And this is often where we go first when we're looking at the intermediate or secondary level at assessing their reading. We ask them to read aloud for us because it gives us a lot of information about how they're doing and if they're actually understanding the text itself. So reading comprehension is the goal of going through all these phases. But you'll notice on the right-hand side here that oral comprehension actually begins to develop when kids are infants, or maybe a little bit later than that. But they start to hear and understand the words. So Penny might understand the word tip, or Jake might have understood the word light, right? But it doesn't mean that he can read that word. So often in our classes, we might have students who are very good with their oral comprehension. They have a ton of background knowledge, they understand the vocabulary, and they can have really rich discussion about a topic of interest or something that is being taught. But when it comes to reading about it, that can be a big struggle if they can't actually read the words on the page. Or we could have the opposite. We could have students who are really good at reading the words on the page. They can read, but they struggle very much with understanding what the words are saying. So they might be missing vocabulary or background knowledge. And this is often the case with multilingual learners who have had phonemic awareness in their first language. And they've also learned how to break down the sounds and sound things out. So if they read a text aloud to us in English, they can do that maybe very smoothly. But then when we ask them questions about what they've read, they're missing the comprehension. And the comprehension can have to do with their background knowledge or their vocabulary. And so there's different things that we'll work on and we'll talk about in videos coming next around what we can do to support students if they're struggling with either their reading the words on the page, their fluency, or if they're struggling with their understanding. So striving intermediate and secondary readers might be able to read familiar words or one-syllable words, but struggle to read words that are multisyllabic, which is more than one syllable. And if this is the case, they might guess or replace words with known words. So as the example I used before was, if they see the word pack, they might read it as backgrounds. They might skip over that second piece. And this can have a huge impact on the text meaning. Or striving intermediate and secondary readers, they might be able to read fluently. They might be able to read really well, but they might struggle with that vocabulary, their background knowledge, and maybe even their understanding of the logic of the sentence or the syntactic structure. So this is when we're thinking about multilingual learners in particular. They might not understand the syntactic structure of a sentence because it's different in their first language. Or even I think about different disciplines. In math, how do we organize the structure of a math word problem? How are the words there? And what kind of mathematical logic or syntactic logic are we using? And how is that different than in social science? So striving intermediate and secondary readers, they need to first be able to read all the words on the page, and they have to be able to do that fluently, but they also have to have the background knowledge and the vocabulary to be able to understand what we're giving them. So what does this mean for us as secondary, intermediate or secondary teachers and content teachers and phys ed teachers and ESL and ELD teachers? It means we need to do some assessments to figure out where students are struggling. And so the next video in this series is going to focus on how do we assess students' reading in our classes to be able to determine what they're struggling with. And the third video is going to show some strategies that can be used across content classes that will support striving readers in intermediate and secondary contexts. So thank you so much for listening and for your time today, and stay tuned for the next video.